Welcome to Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang, currently sheltering in place in San Francisco. Promising results from early vaccine testing sending shares soaring. The pharma giant Moderna saying early tests of its vaccine candidate have shown that it is safe in people and also prohibiting the virus from replicating. Of course, we need longer studies to confirm that the vaccine actually works. But here's the CEO of Moderna speaking earlier today on Bloomberg Television.
We are finalizing the protocol for the phase 3, which is the last clinical study before approval, which we are hoping to start in July of this year. The study will be several thousand healthy subjects across many countries. We are finalizing the protocol as we speak with the FDA, and we are hoping that it can start in July as is our plan.
Moderna there talking about how it is now accelerating its testing. This, of course, sending shares soaring, the Dow ending the day up almost 4%. I want to bring in Bloomberg's Taylor Riggs, who's been following the market action. And Taylor, as I said, there's still a lot more work that needs to be done here in order to prove that the vaccine works. This would have to be going on for much longer and more sustained human trials. How much of this rally is solely due to the hope of an earlier vaccine here?
Oh, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say probably 100%, right, Emily? I mean, the markets are just sort of looking for any excuse here, and Moderna today seemed to certainly provide that. I will say, though, that the street seems to be pretty happy about this. At one point, Moderna shares were trading at a record high. You also had Goldman Sachs upgrade the stock to $105 a share with a buy rating. That is a street high price target, saying that this vaccine hits the mark. Piper Sandler also raised the price target to $102 a share, saying that this could have potential blockbuster sales next year. So effectively, you had some analysts on the street doubling their price targets today. You did hint about a little bit of a note of caution, and I will reiterate that as well, that analysts did say that the results are really just a sample from a small first study look to see about how safe it could be in human volunteers, and it should be viewed with caution. That said, this early study showed no major safety worries, and that would be a key first hurdle, since a vaccine obviously would be given to millions of healthy individuals. So there is a little bit of a sense of caution, but a lot of hope and optimism here reflected in the stock price and in the general markets as well.
Right. Of course, the speculation is that the economy could bounce back more quickly if an earlier vaccine is developed. Meantime, you also had Apple stores slowly continuing to reopen, Apple rallying there. What else do you think, or what else stood out among the green, if indeed it was the vaccine that was mostly driving it?
You know, I think what continues to stand out to me, and we've been talking about this in the last few days here, that tech has not provided the typical leadership that we've seen. Despite the massive rally that we saw today, tech was the underperformer. You had the NASDAQ, and I'm being serious here when I say only up about 2.5%. That's because some of all of the other major averages were up 4, 5, 6%. And so tech isn't providing the typical leadership. That said, you had the SOX index up 4.8%. This is on a lot of hope that China is getting back to work. We had reports that China is seeing oil demand near pre-crisis levels, so people are getting back to work. So chip makers in the SOX index with a lot of revenue tied to China were some of the big outperformers today. I would also note a key theme from Jay Powell, who spoke not only on 60 Minutes last night, but came out with a scripted release today at around 4 p.m. Eastern with what he'll present to the Senate tomorrow, saying that they continue to do whatever it takes. They have full ammunition to support the economy. So that also drove a lot of the Russell 2000, those small cap stocks that are really insulated to the domestic economy. So like you said, really hopes that we're getting back to work sooner.
Meantime, more news out of Uber. We also saw shares there rise. This after the company announced it's cutting another 3,000 jobs in addition to 3,700 jobs lost earlier this month. Uber refocusing on the core business of ride sharing, of food delivery. That said, they've already pushed out their profitability milestones to next year as opposed to this year. And Dara Khosrowshahi, the CEO, saying in his memo that the company is still far away from these cuts being even close to covering their costs. So why are investors optimistic?
And the timing here is suspect, right? Because we know that they're looking at trying to buy Grab, and yet at the same time coming back, cutting an additional 3,000 jobs, and then saying that they want to sell off some of their non-core assets. So the timing here really gives you a sense that Uber is really focusing in on some of those core businesses, which we know is delivery platforms and the traditional ride sharing. I would also note, I think investors were really happy about this because there was some movement over the weekend between this deal. Initially, Uber had offered 1.9 Uber shares for every Grub share. Grub came back and said, we want 2.15. Uber said, well, maybe we'll give you 1.925. So you are getting a little bit closer to an agreement. While they're not meeting halfway, you are seeing a little bit of movement on Uber's side to appease some of the Grubhub shareholders. So in that case, it did provide a little bit of optimism. That said, cutting those 3,000 jobs, you wonder how much money it would save, how much of an impact it really does have on the bottom line.
And they're also going to be incurring almost $200 million in expenses just from severance payments and benefits and the cost to close a bunch of offices. Okay, Taylor Riggs for us in New York. Taylor, thank you so much. I want to bring in Bloomberg's Lizette Chapman, who's been covering this Uber story for us. Lizette, Uber also closing 45 offices around the world, including Singapore, which has served as a regional hub. Where are the majority of these cuts, these jobs, actually coming from?
Right. They're across the company and they're globally. They're not detailing what type of impact this is going to have on some of the more speculative units like, autonomous driving and freight and, some of the other ones like that. Regarding the offices, these are 45 offices out of hundreds that Uber has around the world. Most of them are smaller offices. The largest by far is the one in San Francisco, which is one of several offices it has. But it's part of a consolidation effort that's going to be happening in San Francisco and also in New York to get their workers back to one central location once they do reopen after COVID.
So the spokesperson for Uber indicating that more layoffs could come, and there have been multiple reports about tension inside. Obviously, this has now become kind of a protracted process because they laid off folks earlier this month, and then everyone seemed to be bracing for more. Are there going to be more layoffs, and where? And are there certain departments that are living and working in fear right now?
Precisely. This was expected. It's been coming for about 2 weeks. They did the first round before 3,000. Now they're up to 25% of the workforce laid off. And, Dara in his email said, hey, this is, basically this is the latest, but it's not necessarily the last. So I think they're creating some more wiggle room going forward if rides do not bounce back. Again, they did push out their profitability, target to the beginning of next year. They're looking to continue to cut costs anywhere that they can. Meanwhile, like Taylor mentioned, they are pursuing this acquisition of Grubhub, which is not anywhere near done. There has been no formal announcement of it yet, and they still are facing quite a few antitrust concerns in recent days from Warren and Klobuchar and others. So there's a lot going on for this company right now that still is not profitable.
All right, Lizette Chapman, thank you so much. There's such a sad story. 6,700 jobs now lost at Uber in just the last couple of weeks. Lizette, thanks so much for that update. Meantime, another update from TikTok. TikTok has announced that former Disney streaming executive Kevin Meyer will now become the CEO of TikTok and also the COO of ByteDance, which is the parent company of TikTok. This is a story just breaking now. We're going to continue to follow this story and bring you more headlines as we have them. Meantime, an exclusive conversation with Facebook COO Sheryl Sandberg. Facebook has just unveiled the results of a new survey about just how devastating the pandemic has been to small businesses. That's coming up. This is Bloomberg. Small and medium businesses have been devastated by the impact of the coronavirus, and Facebook is now out with a new survey done with a Small Business Roundtable to show just how much small businesses are struggling. Joining me now in an exclusive interview, Facebook COO Sheryl Sandberg. Sheryl, thank you so much for joining us. This survey found that a third of small businesses have stopped operating amidst the pandemic, and 11% expect to fail if these conditions persist. Obviously, behind every one of these businesses are people, and more people, and it is just devastating. What was most shocking to you about the findings here?
Well, it's exactly what you said. We had planned this survey a few months ago. And when we first thought we were launching, if you think back even 3 months, we expected a completely rosy picture for small businesses. But that's not what we found. And what's really important for everyone to understand is small businesses are the engine of job growth in our country. 2/3 of the jobs created before coronavirus came from small business. So they're going to have to lead the recovery. And along with the statistics you just shared, a third not operating at all, 11% expect to fail. One of the numbers that really jumped out at me from our report is that more than half of small business owners don't expect they will be able to rehire the employees they'd laid off, within a reasonable period of time. And that means that we have our challenges cut out for us in getting America back to work.
So small businesses account for 2/3 of U.S. job growth, and they also account for the vast majority of advertisers on Facebook. Talk to us about how crucial they are to Facebook as a constituency and what small businesses mean for Facebook strategically.
We're in the business of small business. 160 million small businesses use our free tools and services every month. 8 million are advertisers, so the advertising is a fairly small fraction of what we do with them. We're a big company and we have deep pockets, and we're lucky. So our focus right now is not really on our own business, which is doing fine. We just reported our quarter, but really on helping small businesses understand what's going on with this report. We launched a $100 million fund, 40 million of which was earmarked for the US, half of that earmarked for minority, women, and veteran-owned businesses. Our focus is really their business. We want to help small businesses survive because we think we all have a responsibility to do as much as we can through this crisis.
Now, I know a lot of businesses have been getting creative about using technology, using the web to market themselves. Facebook has for some time been working on bumping up the e-commerce experience on the platform. And I wonder if you're accelerating any of those efforts in part to help some of these small businesses, whether it is shopping on Instagram or WhatsApp storefronts.
We are, and we're going to have more to share with product updates tomorrow in commerce and other things that help. What we're seeing small businesses do on the platforms are incredible. There are so many good stories, but one of them is there is a bookstore called I See Me out of Missouri, and they're a local community bookstore, and they're really for Black children to see books and get books about their own history and see the positive role models that, aren't written about enough. They really did everything in person, but now they're doing classes with Facebook online and pushing online sales. So they've morphed something that was totally offline into an online activity. There's a grooming company out of Kalamazoo, Michigan, that is now taking their production expertise. They make men's grooming supplies and helping a local distillery make hand sanitizer and helping people find it and donating it to local hospitals. So the resilience of small business is now so apparent. And it comes out in our report. 57% of small businesses, despite all the bad stats you and I have shared, say that they're still optimistic over the long run for the future of their business. And that's hope I think we all need to hold on to right now.
Now, you're also highlighting some of the challenges being faced by female entrepreneurs. And I'm curious if you can share some of your thoughts about how the pandemic is impacting female entrepreneurship and impacting women in general, especially given childcare issues, school being closed, and how that might be sort of a double whammy and make the situation even harder on women than it already is.
Well, you and I have talked about this so many times, but women work a double shift before coronavirus. And now new data that my foundation put out last week is showing very clearly that women are putting in a double shift. The average heterosexual straight couple right now, the woman is working 71 hours a week doing childcare and housework. That's in addition to what's often a full-time job. Men are doing 50. That's a gap of 21 hours a week. 21 hours a week is half a full-time job. And so again, Emily, you and I have talked for so many years about what has to happen in the workplace has to happen at home. This is a great time for men to lean in to their families. It's a huge burden for everyone right now, and to take as much of it as they can so that women aren't going to completely burn out, which we're already seeing.
Now, that said, there is no end in sight, as much as we all want to see one. You know, we've been talking about a V-shaped recovery or a U-shaped recovery, but now it's looking even more like it's going to be some sort of abnormal recovery. I've heard the word swoosh used. Mm-hmm. Your team must be modeling this out. What is your operating assumption about how the economy comes back, when it comes back, and what it looks like, and how much worse it gets?
So we're not economists, and we're obviously following really closely. So we know what we're doing. We're trying to keep our employees safe. We were one of the first companies to go in. We've already said we're going to be one of the last companies to go back, because we're going to make way for essential workers and healthline workers, keep it as safe as possible for them. And we want to put products into the world that help. And some of those are surprising. I'll give you an example. A couple of weeks ago, we launched fundraisers for small businesses. You know, we've had fundraisers for nonprofits and fundraisers for people for a long time. But if you had asked a few months ago, would we launch fundraisers for small business? We never would have thought of it. But people want to help keep their local businesses alive. And so we launched fundraisers. Our focus is taking all of the great people we have at Facebook who are working hard through this and trying to put products out there that help people stay connected and help small businesses survive through this crisis.
As you said, Facebook has already told employees that they can expect to work from home through the end of the year. I'm curious how you're thinking about the return to work. Like, is it only going to be safe when there's a vaccine? And when this happens, how does the office actually look different?
Well, we're going to follow health guidelines. And obviously, this is a situation that's changing as people learn more. Here's what we know. We know we're trying to keep our essential workers, which is a very small percentage of our team, as safe as possible. That means keeping everyone else home. We know we're going to follow very conservative guidelines on what kind of space people need. And we also know that we're going to continue to learn. I do think if you had asked a lot of us, could we do our jobs from home months ago, we would have said no. And it has been, you know, we are lucky that we can work from home, but it's been pleasantly surprising how much we can get done. And so I do think it's going to change all of our understanding about what has to be done in person. And that change is probably something that won't go back even after there is hopefully soon a vaccine, a cure, a treatment.
Now, Sheryl, multiple organizations, including Bloomberg, have reported that Mark Zuckerberg seems to be consolidating power at Facebook. The New York Times took that a step further and said that you're worried about being pushed aside, worried that your role is being minimized. And Variety just published a story saying that you're a flight risk. I just wanted to give you a chance to respond to that.
You know, kind of no and no. I've worked with Mark for 12 years. We're working together as closely as ever. We have an amazing team, and I feel really lucky to get to do this work. I think what we do matters more than ever. We're putting products out there that help people connect. We're focused on helping small businesses survive, and I plan to keep doing it.
Thank you for fielding that one, Sheryl. You know, around earnings, we also spoke with another member of the leadership team, Facebook CFO Dave Wehner, who said that Facebook was seeing signs of stabilization when it came to ads in April after that big plunge in March. But he did talk about the possibility of further contraction in the ad market. He talked about the uncertainty. What are you seeing now? Are you still seeing that stabilization, or are you concerned there could be more of a contraction to come?
Well, our earnings were just a few weeks ago, and obviously there's still so much uncertainty. We're continuing to focus on making sure we put the right products out there that help people and businesses. We're being conservative in how we spend. We are hiring engineering teams and putting those on the most important projects. And I think we're all taking a very careful look to the future. That's the only way to responsibly run a business right now, and that's what we're trying to do.
Meantime, news broke that last week that the DOJ is pursuing an antitrust case against Google, and legal cases seem to be proceeding despite the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic. The DOJ in almost 50 states have been looking at Facebook as well as the FTC. From your perspective, what kind of progress is actually being made, or has the pandemic potentially changed the view from some of these federal agencies, given how valuable and essential technology has been to helping us survive this lockdown?
Well, we cooperate with regulators. We work closely with regulators all over the world, and any inquiries we get. I do think that this pandemic has shown that some of the services we provide are really important, and the size and scope we have makes providing that possible. But right now we're in a crisis. The whole world is. It's a health crisis. It's an economic crisis. It's a crisis for gender equality and for women and girls all over the world. So we're just rolling up our sleeves, doing everything we can to get as many people through this, and that's going to be our focus. And we will work hard on all of those issues as they come up as well.
You've been making moves to clamp down on misinformation about COVID-19, but again, this is sort of an arms race still, and it's really difficult to keep up. I know you're relying more on AI, trying to rely more on AI, but you're seeing some of this misinformation pop up in images and in video, which is more difficult to police. Where do you think the biggest challenges still remain when it comes to fighting misinformation on the platform?
So as you said, misinformation is an ongoing battle, and it is an arms race. We do more, they figure it out. We do more, they figure it out. I think we're tremendously benefited by, although it was hard, all of the troubles we had over the last few years really are why we built up the systems we had. So now we have systems in place for misinformation. We have third-party fact checkers. We have partnerships in place with government agencies, so that, like the CDC, so that when harmful misinformation starts to spread on our platforms, we can take it down really quickly. I think we're going to have to continue to be very rigorous as we monitor this going forward. And we're going to have to continue to fight misinformation on every step. I do think during this period, we've really used all the tools we've had for this, but we've also been focused on getting good information to people. We've pushed nearly 2 billion people to accurate health information by being pretty aggressive at putting accurate health information into their news feeds, into the product, and we're going to continue to do that as well.
Facebook just acquired Giphy, planning to make it part of the Instagram team. Are we going to see more M&A? Are you actively looking for other opportunities out there?
So we were working on Giphy before the coronavirus hit. M&A is something we do very infrequently now. I think Giphy is a good acquisition for us. 50% of their traffic came from Facebook. We're going to continue to make the product available, not just to our users, but to other partners as they have before. And we'll see, but this was something we were working on before.
Now, last question I want to ask about, some of these antitrust issues. Even as you've released this news about small businesses, you have critics like the advocacy group Freedom from Facebook saying this is a thinly veiled PR campaign from one of the world's biggest quote unquote monopolies. Given the chance of potentially more investigations into Facebook, are you prepared to make changes that might need to be made to avoid that?
So again, it's early in this process. We believe that we offer a competitive service in a highly competitive environment. We believe that we face competition from products from China, products from all over the world. And you can see that. You can see that in the rise of TikTok and the kind of numbers they can put up so quickly. So we're going to continue to work with regulators. We're going to continue to make the case for innovation in America, protect ourselves, protect small businesses, and we'll see what happens on all of this. I think this story will play out over a very long period of time.
All right. Sheryl Sandberg, COO of Facebook. Thank you so much, Sheryl, for taking the time today. Really appreciate you joining us, as always. All right, coming up, Leadership Live. United Airlines CEO Oscar Munoz joins our own David Rubenstein to talk about actions he is taking to make sure the U.S. airline carrier weathers this pandemic. That's coming up after this quick break. This is Bloomberg. All right, let's get to Leadership Live now with David Rubenstein, sitting down with United CEO Oscar Munoz.
And seeing how they're doing that. And today we're very pleased and honored to have Oscar Munoz with us. Oscar is the CEO of United Airlines, a company that obviously has been affected by this as much as any company in the United States. Oscar, thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you for having me, David.
So I want to make sure everybody is familiar with your story, which is an incredible story before we go into COVID-19. You are the oldest of 9 children, is that right?
That's true.
So you have 4 children yourself, and you have how many nieces and nephews?
I think around 37 at last count.
And do any of them fly anything other than United?
Absolutely not.
Right, of course. So you are first in your family to go to college, and you have an undergraduate degree from USC, and then you got your MBA from Pepperdine, and then you worked through a series of positions at Coca-Cola, Pepsi, and US West, and then CSX. And you rose, yes, and you rose up to be the CEO of CSX while you were on the board of United Airlines.
I was president and COO as well as COO
okay.
of CSX. Yeah.
President and COO, and then somebody came along and said to you, if you're on the board of United Airlines, that you should become the CEO. They needed a new CEO, and you decided to do so. And I assume you never regretted that decision. You were happy you did that, right?
CSX was an incredible company, but I think United offered exactly what's transpired, a real important and difficult challenge in my career progression about where it was, and it certainly was a turnaround. CSX had been a turnaround, my previous company, and I'd been part of a team, so I really felt the chance that this was my chance to do it myself with another
So you
team.
took over that position in September of 2015, and in October of 2015, you had a heart attack. And a few months later, you had a heart transplant. And then you went back to work a few months after that. So had you been in good health before you went to United Airlines, and were you shocked that you had a heart attack?
Yeah, that's the one thing about heart disease, and I could give a whole PSA on that. But it is one of those diseases that you don't often know. I was a marathon runner. I was a vegan, and worked out as much as we can given our schedules. So it was a bit of a shock to have that kind of disease, and not so and as much to have it as serious as it actually manifested itself.
And then you were running the company. You came back from the heart attack. You're running the company, and then you said to your colleagues one day, I have to go do something today. And by the way, I'll let you know later what it is. And then you got a heart transplant.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Technically, the legal people tell me I have to say that I was technically on medical leave, but yes, I was coming into the office. In my mind, I knew we were waiting for the heart, but we really couldn't tell anybody just for all the obvious reasons. But yeah, on the morning of my birthday, I got a call from my doctor saying, we have a heart for you. And I said, that's terrific. When do you need me in? They said, well, not till this afternoon. So I went into the office, and we had a wonderful strategic conversation going about the future of the company, where a lot of the foundation for what we've been able to do at United was founded that very morning. And at lunchtime, I stood up and said, hey guys, I got to run. I got to go to the hospital. There's something I've been waiting for. And a now infamous line in the sense that it had 2 meanings. I said, I'll see you on the other side. And that could have been misconstrued in a lot of different ways, but it was the foundation and the beginning of the great turnaround story at United.
Well, the turnaround story is that when you came back, I think in March, to run the company full-time as the CEO, you did turn the company around. The market capitalization went up about 25%. The stock price went up about 70%. I think it was 56 when you took over, it went to 96. So it was an incredible story. And you had announced a while ago that you were going to leave this week. This was the week you had planned to step down, announcing that you had a very good successor and you're going to become the executive.
Different plans, and it's tragic what's happened. This COVID virus is insidious and global as everything, and our industry is very familiar with crises. We've had these pandemics before. Of course, we had 9/11. 9/11 was the black swan moment of this era of the industry for us, and we were well prepared for that financially. Our balance sheet was strong. And then something like this hits, and we were one of the first to see its potential impact on our industry, and we took action fairly quickly. But boy, it is just heartbreaking to see how much we've lost on so many fronts.
So let's talk about put the numbers out. How many routes does United Airlines fly in the best of times? You fly how many routes around the world?
Oh gosh, we have approximately 1,400 planes working every day. So we
Okay.
fly into almost 60 different countries around the world. Every single post and
Okay.
point here.
So
So we
let's
have
say 14.
243 stations. So I could go on the numbers for.
All right. So right. So right now, how many of your planes of the 1,400 planes you have? How many planes are you actually using now?
We're probably down to 500-ish or so. But what's important about that number, which doesn't seem as drastic, is we used to fly that many planes relatively full, 80+% full this time last year. We're flying a lot fewer planes at just recently up to maybe 30% of them being filled. We call that a load factor. We've been low at practically over the last couple of months, as low as 10% and even a couple days of single digits. So less planes with less people in them is the real impact. So very little revenue in essence coming in for what is traditionally a very high fixed cost business.
I thought I read that from your company statements that in May of last year, you flew a certain number of hours in one day last year in May. You flew as much as you now fly people all of May of this year. Is that right? Something like that.
There's a lot of math that points out to how dire the situation has been.
So how many employees do you have?
We have roughly 100,000 people, plus 30 or 40,000 more that we employ as different support groups in different places.
So the flight attendants are about 50,000 or so?
About 26,000.
26,000. How many pilots do you have?
About 11, 12,000.
Okay, and the rest are front office employees or works at the airports?
No,
or
I would say close to 80+% are frontline union employees. They work in our maintenance shops. They work in baggage claim. They work at the airport. They're the ones that take care of you as you go through gates.
So as a result of all this, since your revenues are down dramatically and down so much so that nobody could survive, the federal government, as part of the CARES Act, said that we will provide you some money. And you've now gotten $5 billion from the federal government in two forms. Is that right? They've given you a grant and a loan. Is that correct?
Right.
And you have another $5 billion you could borrow, and maybe your process of borrowing as well. So if that's $10 billion that United Airlines would get, and you're going to give some warrants to the U.S. government, you've already given some, but is that enough? Is $10 billion enough for United or your competitors? Is that enough money to keep these airlines alive?
No, that's the great question of the day, David. We don't know what we don't know, and therefore, right from the start, when we saw this happening, we immediately went into markets to boost our liquidity. Again, I said we had a pretty strong financial sheet, a balance sheet, preparing for something like 9/11. This is probably 3 times as worse. So we went in the markets for as much loan debt that we could get. We've issued stock. We have taken the grants and the loan from the government. We have applied for the second loan, and we'll make that decision shortly about that. And then we're also finding other ways, in essence, to a degree, improve your liquidity to the best possible point, and then work on your cost structure to bring the cash burn down to a manageable degree. And then it's just time oriented.
Now, cash burn today is roughly $40 million a day. In other words, you are spending $40 million a day, in effect, losing $40 million a day. Is that more or less right?
It's more or less right. We'll keep working on that, but it's roughly the same number that we've reported publicly.
So your peers in the airline, your competitors, let's say American or Delta, are they in the same situation, I assume, largely?
Yeah, roughly. All of us spent a lot of time together, obviously at arm's length, but working through the CARES Act conversations and interacting with our legislative leaders. And we are forever grateful for the assistance that they've given us. We're one of the few industries that was carved out for this level of assistance because they do understand the economic impact, the impact we have on the economy and the wheel that we are to juice that. But we've all worked together, and I think by and large, we all have different situations and positions, but generally, I think in the same vein.
So all of your employees today, you haven't actually laid anybody off or furloughed anybody. Is that right?
Right.
And under the CARES Act, I think you're not supposed to be able to do so until October 1, if you do it at all.
That's correct.
So after October 1, what do you think is going to happen?
So the Payroll Protection Act is what it officially is called, was granted the money to give us time to get other liquidity and make other decisions. what we have told our employees, and it's been one of the most heart-wrenching conversations and difficult to have because of all that we built together regarding trust and togetherness and the things that we've been building, is we really felt the need, myself and Scott Kirby, our current president, soon to be CEO, it was really important to let them know as honestly and as positive, as much as possible and transparently as possible, that the future was really from a standpoint of where we see our business. If we were 100%, obviously before the virus, come October 1st, there really isn't a lot of scenarios that have us back at that full strength of 100%. So in order to be able to survive enough to rebuild this company going forward, it's going to be important to manage our cost structure down. And our employees have been great in responding. A lot of them have taken voluntary leaves in order to save us from having to do any furloughs. So no decisions in that part, other than we have been probably one of the strongest communicators about the fact that post September, that it's looking like we were going to have to sort of size our network and our structure down to a certain level.
So all the planes that you have, the 900 planes you're not using, where are they, in the desert in Arizona, or where are you keeping those planes?
They're in airports, as all the industry, they're in airports everywhere around America. I get constant calls from neighbors or old friends or relatives. So I'm just driving Apple Valley, California. There's a small airport there, and it's like, wow, I saw like 10 of your planes there, Oscar. And it's like, yep, that would be. So parking spots are obviously for that many aircraft in the industry to be down are everywhere.
But you're not buying any new planes, I assume.
Yeah, no, that's probably not going to be something that we're going to be. We have some orders that we'll end up taking for contractual reasons and such over the course of the next few months and into next year. But from a long-term perspective, at this point in time, we've messaged very clearly to the world that we're not going to build a capacity before the demand is there. So that's going to be the delicate balance.
So there was a story on the news the other night where the United airplanes seemed to be flying across the country and it was full. I think you might be taking healthcare workers or something like that. So it was full with a lot of healthcare workers, but there seemed to be the middle seats were filled, I guess. Right now, if I fly in United Airlines, are the middle seats generally going to be filled, or you're not letting anybody sit in those?
You know, it's been a difficult concept and topic for us to manage. We are trying our best to give you the distancing sort of needs that are required, but you know, our customers kind of ebb and flow. And so in that particular case, a lot of those healthcare workers showed up at the airport the next morning to get their flights back, be home for Mother's Day. And so that plane in particular got full. Generally, at that time, I think 85% of our flights that had gone out the previous month were less than half full. And only 1% of our flights were full at that level. So it's a very rare occurrence. But in this particular case, especially with healthcare workers, and so what's interesting about this time for us is that it is greenfield. Nobody knows exactly what to do. So the important part is to acknowledge a situation like that, pivot quickly, and come up with a solution. And so while blocking middle seats seems obvious to most people, that isn't necessarily the case. People are worried not about the middle seat, but the fullness of the plane. I hear that it's empty, then I show up and it's like, oh my God, it's all these people. So what we quickly pivoted to is we now let you know if you have our app or connected with us, if you're flying tomorrow, let's say, you'll get something from us that say, David, you know what, tomorrow's flight seems to be over 70% full. If you're at all uncomfortable with that, we can offer you the plane, a flight leaving 2 hours more. And in addition, by the way, we also communicate, our air filtering systems, the electrostatic cleaning that we're doing on every aircraft, the fact that everybody's wearing face masks. We've re-engineered our food service in so many ways. So we've done all of that to ensure your mind is safe.
Let me make sure for somebody who's listening and might want to be flying. So are all of your flight attendants, do they have to wear a face mask?
Yes, and not only that, also our customers.
Okay, and suppose somebody shows up at your airplane and they don't have a face mask. Do you have them for them?
We have them for you. We also, starting today, we're providing a little amenity kit that will be branded. I'm not supposed to say this, but I'll let you know because you're a friend. United Clean Plus. It'll be a little amenity kit that has a snack, a water, and some hand wipes for you as you enter the aircraft, along with a mask if you need it. We're finding a lot of people are bringing their own masks for the obvious reasons.
Well, where did you get all these masks? I mean, was it hard to get, millions of masks?
Well, interestingly enough, obviously the supply of those masks has increased in large part to companies like ours, and since we're not flying internationally, not flying customers, We've taken a lot of missions to bring back PPE, to bring back and repatriate citizens that were stranded abroad. So I think we're up to more than 30 million tons of things that we brought back into the country.
So let's talk about food. I think you've changed your food. So you're not really serving the normal type of food. You are serving stuff that's prepackaged, more or less. Is that right?
Yeah, we're just trying to reduce touch on everything as much as possible.
And your flight attendants, they can't even sit next to each other very closely. You're keeping them apart from each other?
Distancing is a really important part that we have to continue to monitor as best as possible. The fact of it is, of course, in an aircraft, as you know, it's a very contained spot, which is why, again, we're really communicating all the different things that are being done on that aircraft to ensure that it is indeed safe and clean.
What about the lavatories? I mean, you have to clean them very regularly, and it's much more.
Yeah, and those are clean. I mean, people would argue. I know you and I have talked about the size of airline labs, but you know, our flight attendants are constantly in there cleaning and servicing those as well as possible. So yeah, you know, safety and cleaning is something that's going to be really crucial and important. But we also have to extend that, by the way, into the airport itself, and hopefully working with the government, doing potentially temperature checks. Spacing everyone out. Necessity is the mother of invention. We wanted to do so many things over time about touchless kiosks, where in essence, you don't have to touch anything. You don't have to get a piece of paper to hand out to someone. How can we do this fairly without any sort of human contact, and provide you that option if you so need.
So you're boarding your planes last row to first row. Is that how you're doing it now?
Okay.
And how do you egress the opposite way, or how do you get people off?
No, that's, as you know, you've been in aircrafts. The people in front want to get out quickly, and I think that's the best way, right? That's it, because you're only in that. So the less people are passing by each other, the better.
Okay, so let's talk about how you're managing this company from remotely. So you're in your home right now, and how do you manage it? Were you equipped to do this? When did you start doing this? You're based in Illinois. So when Illinois kind of had a rule that you couldn't go to the offices, is that when you started doing that?
Yeah, we quickly began to everyone went to their respective corners to be safe, clearly. And we began initially by just managing through voice. And then, of course, all these various vehicles that we have to communicate via this way became sort of the norm. It's been fascinating to watch all our different leaders. I spend a lot of time calling our officers and asking them that very same question, because we have a vast organization, again, 100,000 people spread all over the world. How best to communicate, how best to answer questions about concerns. Initially, it was about safety in the workplace, and increasingly it's about my personal situation. Am I going to be employed? So it's been a difficult mechanism to do it in this way, but we have found ways, and mostly because we meet constantly. We have a daily call with our executive team every single day, including weekends, because things are moving so quickly in our space. So many new issues arise, and we're trying to solve so many of these issues. So constant communication, honest, transparent, as much as possible. We've held town halls that have had 50, 60,000 people on them. And so again, communication, you can never over communicate in situations like this.
Do you expect that once this is over, whenever it is, that you will do some of the things that you're now doing just because it's more efficient, or you're not sure you need to use any of these techniques in the future?
It's all going to evolve. I fundamentally believe that humans need connection. You and I would much rather be having this conversation face to face. It's infinitely more meaningful. And if you take personal events in our lives, a wedding, for instance, all of those things, I think over the course of time, with a vaccine or herd immunity or something, we will revert back to some of that normality. But I really do believe and very bullish on the future of aviation, because we're going to want to travel. A lot of people that I speak with can't wait to get on the next aircraft and go somewhere. But it's gonna have to be beyond how clean our aircraft are, right? And how clean the airports. Whatever destination you're going to is also going to have to be clean. We often use for lack of a better, the Disney World or Disneyland, right? That has to be open. That has to be safe for me to put my family and my children on an aircraft to get there, and the hotels and the car rental. All of that ecosystem needs to come up at the same time.
So to be realistic about it, your internal planning is assumption that it's going to take a number of years for something to really get back to where you were?
David, I wish we knew, but you have to plan for the worst and certainly hope for the best. We know for certain that come October, we're not going to be at 100%. And what number we are going to be at, I don't know, but it's going to be south of that. And so our job is to plan again for that worst scenario. We've had experiences with some of these before. Demand has taken certainly multiple months to get back to where it was. I think SARS was about 8 months. This is infinitely more global and insidious, and feel that this could last a little bit longer, absent a vaccine of some sort to make it.
Now, you fly all over the world. Have you noticed that the passengers who come from, let's say, other parts of the world, when they fly on your planes, are they different than the Americans? Or they act the same way? They take the same precautions? They don't take as many precautions? Are they different around the world?
Clearly, every country has its own cultures and norms. Unfortunately, though, David, we're not flying a lot of people internationally right now, so I don't have a vantage point to do that. But historically, you did see, I mean, Asian populations have been wearing masks for a long time, and you see certain people doing that, and others not. So you clearly see some of that.
So you and I have talked before about one of my favorite questions, which is support animals. So you still allow support animals to come on the planes, and
yeah, we
you're
do.
required to do
Amidst
that?
all of this, everything we do on the safety and clean side has to be balanced with the the hospitality and warmth that you should and you deserve. And so how do we balance those things? So things like support animals and such, we are allowing. We do have restrictions. It is just dogs and cats. I know you and I have talked about many other sort of animals that people want to bring, but dogs and cats, and they have to be of a certain age. They have to be above 4 months old, so they're not carrying anything. So we've tried to be thoughtful and again hospitable to people that need to bring those. But again, we are allowing that.
Now, you've spent a lot of your time at United getting to know your employees. There was some, I would say, unrest in the employee base when you took over, and you spent a lot of time dealing with labor union members and other workers. Do you miss seeing these employees face to face now?
It kills me not to be able to see them. I call them all the time. We do this. I catch them at awkward moments. A lot of them are at home and they won't put the video on because they just got out of their pajamas or their hair isn't messed up. In this world, our purpose as a corporation was to connect people and unite the world. It currently is. This is what people do for a living. We love taking care of you as you travel, and to not be there for them, to not be able to see them. I think really everyone in our company feels that loss.
So when somebody has, let's say, an immunity problem, let's suppose they've been ill, let's suppose they've had a heart transplant, does that make it more challenging to fly? And people that have health problems, are you giving them special attention, or how do you know how to deal with those people?
As a customer, we're not allowed to ask questions like that.
But if they tell you in advance,
yes, absolutely. We don't know a lot about this disease, but we have general characteristics. If anybody's in a situation where they're in that one of those affected classes, absolutely, we make allowances for those folks. We don't want to put anyone at risk or in danger of any sorts for themselves or for others around them.
Well, so you're now somebody that's had a heart transplant for, let's say, about 5 years or so. So you're reasonably good shape. You exercise a lot, but are you in more health problems because of this disease, and you have to be especially careful? And are you going to isolate yourself?
Yeah, we don't know enough about this disease, so we should all be safe. We should all stay home. We should also all follow CDC guidelines. But you would think that someone like me with my low immune system, in essence, could be more susceptible to this. We fly around, we see people, we try to stay as clean and safe as possible. It is the nature of our job to be present. But over the last few weeks, I think the entire organization, we've just said, everybody hunker down. Let's do this the right thing and lead by example.
So your children and you're all together there in the house, or your children are grown or elsewhere, or
again, as you know, no one's working in offices, no one's going to school, and so they've all 3 of the 4 decided to shelter in place here at our home in Florida, and so it's been nice to have everybody. There's a silver lining to everything, and we've literally had family dinners every night for months now, and so there is some value there for sure.
So what would you say you have learned about yourself through this experience? You've obviously gone through some traumatic experiences in your life, but have you learned anything through this experience about yourself that you maybe didn't know before?
Well, two fronts. With regards to, because I've been through so many things, there's especially medically, my level of empathy and understanding of people's worries and concerns has been heightened. And a lot of the actions we are trying to take is to make sure we keep our employees and our customers safe. So that's certainly sort of directed that. But beyond that, you also learn a little bit about what you want to do in life. And you and I have been in a lot of calls and meetings with a lot of our leaders of the business community. This is clearly a time for action, and all of us have the capacity in various ways to do that. And while I'm stepping into the executive chair role at United, and I'll be very focused on that, it's also going to be important to understand and know where not only myself, but other business leaders and community leaders and people in universities and nonprofits. I think we all have a great capacity to serve and do more.
So is there anything you wish the company had done or your industry had done in hindsight that wasn't done?
You can always go back and point to something or other, but in this particular case, our industry balance sheets were really strong. We had great growth trajectories. We had, a great deal of investment.
United CEO Oscar Munoz there with David Rubenstein on Leadership Live. That does it for this edition of Bloomberg Technology. Bloomberg Daybreak Australia is next. This is Bloomberg.